Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today's Saturday, which means I'm editing This Week in Stupid, so I'll just make a fast video now to please your entertainment, and I'm going to talk about some philosophical stuff, which usually doesn't give me a lot of views, but if you happen to like this video, please do share it, because I think I'm onto something here, and I want to know what you guys have to say. Now, I do think that this is a problem created mostly by capitalism. I'm going to explain why it's created by capitalism, but I'm also going to tell you the solution for this problem. But before I begin, I need to give you a little bit of context. See, I'm a person that finished 2 universities. I went to law school, I graduated, I went to med school, I graduated. I wasn't top of my class or anything, but I was definitely above average. So I do have a lot of understanding about how it is to go to a college. And when I was a teenager, going to college was sold to me as a huge achievement. It was sold to me as you need to go to college so you don't do manual labor, so you don't do some of these other jobs. It was sold to me that in life you can be anything you want. And when I grew up, I realized that is not the case. You see, when you go to college, and again, like we're talking about law school and med school, you realize that it's not that difficult if you put your mind to it. And this is not because I consider myself to be a highly gifted person. I mean, you guys watch me on this channel for quite a while, and you know the type of mental capacity that I have, and the type of person that I am. I don't think I'm anything special. I don't think I'm a super genius. I don't think that I'm the type of individual that is on the level of Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro or other more charismatic and more intellectual people. No, like what it is when you go to college, you need to be able to memorize things. That's literally it. Like, if you can memorize something and then repeat it to the teacher, you will have no problem with graduating colleges. And again, unless you're going to a math college or unless you're going to a physics college, like something that requires more than just memorizing things, you will be fine. From my experience, even some of the dumbest people that I know, if they spend enough time learning the materials and memorizing it, they manage to graduate. I mean, I knew a guy which had schizophrenia. He also suffered from a mild case of autism. I mean, the guy would have a lot of difficulty integrating in most social circles, and he finished med school. Now, he didn't finish it in 6 years like most people, he finished it in 9, but he finished it nonetheless. And now he's working at a German hospital. So, what I'm trying to say is that finishing a college is something that everyone can do. Usually, the people that didn't finish college were the people that really didn't like it there, were the people that didn't really study. They went out clubbing, they went out and had fun or partying. Or it was like people that legitimately had like a lot of bad luck, like maybe their parents passed away in a car crash and they couldn't focus on their stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that overwhelmingly, the amount of people that go to college aren't exceptional. They're not individuals that are the intellectual elites of society. Like anyone, in my opinion, that puts his mind to it and doesn't have severe mental deficiencies like inability to communicate or inability to think properly can finish a college. So why is that important? Why is it important to talk about this? Well, when I went to law school, after graduating, I found out that I was only one of over 3,000 people in my country that graduated from law school that year. And those 3,000 people are being added to the already high number of unemployed lawyers that are in the country. And you have to understand that all of a sudden the dream that was being sold to you, the idea that you're going to manage to make it whatever you want, the idea that you can be whatever you want in life doesn't hold up. Okay, like you're not special anymore. You're not a very intelligent person. You're not the next Jordan Peterson. No, you're just a twat among 3,000 other twats. And when you finish university, you realize that you don't really know how to do anything. I mean, if you take university graduates from law school and you were to actually give them a case to solve, like, okay, go to trial and represent this person, they probably wouldn't know. And this is mostly due to the fact that universities, as I mentioned before, focus you on memorizing things and then telling it to the teacher. Most university graduates are like drones. They're very good at doing things, they're very efficient at doing that, but you have to handhold them, which is why a lot of jobs have a training period. Like they take university graduates and they go through that training period, which can last even to several months, if not a year in some places, where they get to learn how to actually do the job. And this is usually at major companies that can afford to have people to handhold and babysit. And you'll notice that people who don't go to university, they know how to do things. Like people who are self-taught, like people who learn to code by themselves, they don't need the hand-holding. So that's an important observation that I had. The second observation that I had was that, as I mentioned before, it was very difficult to find a job. And for 1 year, I really tried my best in order to find a job. I sent resumes, I asked around, and it wasn't just me. Like I asked the other people who I was keeping in touch with from the university, and they were having difficult times as well. Now, of course, this might also be due to the fact that the economic crisis hit, the housing crisis from the United States affected Europe, and finding a job was very difficult at the time. But eventually, I did something that most of my colleagues didn't want, and that was to try to find a job that I wasn't specialized for. So I went into the hospitality industry. I went to the service industry. I really was desperate to find a job. I tried going to companies to work at call centers because I spoke fluent English, unlike other Romanians. And I lowered my expectations. Now, eventually, I did manage to get a job in a hospital as the guy who does the statistics, and is kind of like, the first person you meet when you go into a hospital. It's sort of a secretary, but it's a little bit more than that. And it paid a little bit above minimum wage, but I was really happy with my job. However, my colleagues were mocking me. Okay, so my colleagues, which also finished the same law school that I did, some of them had smaller grades than I did, considered what I was doing to be shameful, to be ashamed that I'm lowering myself. Even though they were unemployed and they were living with their parents, they considered the fact that I managed to get a job and use that money to later on put myself through med school, but at the time they didn't know that I was going to do that. But they viewed that what I was doing to be, very shameful. It's almost like I was the cleaning lady or something like that. Okay, so it's the mentality of these fake elites. And they are fake elites because society constantly hammers it into their brain that they're amazing for managing to finish a university. They're fake elites because they're not really producing anything, but they do want to be treated as if they are elites, as if they are God's gift to society. And this is a major problem because now all these people that are these fake elites, which the universities produce every year, they have a lot of grievances because they view themselves as being too good for the system. And they blame the system, which in a way it is the fault of the system, but not really why they think it is. So these people who manage to finish all these universities, like, not only cannot get a job, but in some cases like the United States, they also have to pay student debt. And as such, they latch on to whatever cultural messages are out there, which tries to explain why they are in this predicament. Because from their point of view, they did nothing wrong. They went to a university, they studied hard, they graduated, but now the reward that was promised to them isn't there, and instead they also have to pay student debt. So they're desperate to understand why it is that in this situation and how to fix it. So they look around and they find messages that blames the system, that blames capitalism. They find politicians that promise them that, hey, if you vote for me, I will abolish your student debt. They latch onto ideologies that try to overthrow the system. And in reality, it is the system. But it's not why they think, as I mentioned before. The reality is that because of capitalism, the purpose of a university is to produce money. The university, whether it is run by the state or not, is still an entity that is interested in making money, because the university professors who work there, even if they work for the government or if they work for the private sector, they want bigger wages. They want more influence. They want more power. They want more prestige. They want stuff because it's the human greed that exists. And the way they view it is that the more students that come to the university, the more money they can ask either from the government or the more money they can milk from the students. Even if it's a state-run university like in Romania, the university professor wants as many students as possible so that they can buy his books, so that they can pay extra fees. Like, okay, maybe they missed a couple of classes and now they have to recover in special courses. These professors, they want more students. That is what they want. They don't care if those students can then be integrated by society into productive businesses so that the students can be happy. The universities are not being measured on the quality they produce for a society. In other words, the way you should measure a university would be to have a company doing statistics and interviewing the students who graduated. How many of them managed to find a job in that particular field within 2 years? So if a university, let's say, manages to have 3,000 students graduating every year, but only 2% of them manage to find jobs in those particular fields, that should be on the box. That should be on a label. Like, hey, you want to go to this university? That's fine, but you should know that if you go to this university, it is incredibly unlikely for you to find a job in that field. And then the student is not going to blame the system anymore. The student is going to realize that it was his fault. It was his decision to go there and study. You know, like some people, maybe they just want to do philosophy in life. You know, they don't really want to actually become a expert in the field. They don't really want to practice in that field. But maybe they're at the age of 50, they did a lot. Maybe they just want to do philosophy university. For them, that is perfect. But for a young student who wants to move out of his parents' house and he wants to learn how to do a trade, going to gender studies specializing in dancing lessons for lesbians might not be the perfect job fulfillment. That he might not be able to get a job. He's going to finish that. He's going to think he's very intellectual, that he understands lesbians dancing more than any other person on the planet Earth. And maybe he does, but he's not going to be able to find a job because society doesn't require that many people that are specialized in that field. So that is how you would fix it. You would have to maybe, I don't know, like have third-party companies or maybe even the government to look at universities and have this survey being done on the students that graduate. And then the university should be forced to disclose. It's like, okay, you want to join the IT department. It's like 60% of the students that work here eventually manage to find a job, right? So that would be the first step. The second step is to stop shaming the working class. Because, again, when I was a kid, it was go to a university so you don't end up as a working class guy. That was the mentality, not just by my parents, but by also my teachers, also the people around me. Everyone was trying to tell me this thing, like just go to a university so you don't end up as a working class man. You know what's funny? Again, I have 2 university degrees. There's this guy who managed to become an electrician when I was in high school. Like, he didn't go to a college. He went to, we call it a professional school, a school where you learn a profession. And he learned how to be an electrician. That guy now has his own company, is a lot wealthier than anyone that I know who went to a university, and is doing just fine. And the problem is that there's a lot of people who would probably fit very well in that sector. There's a lot of people who would probably fit a lot well in the service industry, in the manufacturing industry, in construction. Like, there's a lot of people who would enjoy that lifestyle, but we, for some reason, look down upon these people. I remember, like, Destiny, in a conversation with Sargat Avocad, was snarking at the idea of builders. Like, wow, why would people want to become a builder? And there were like people in the chat, hey, like, I'm a builder, it's a noble profession. And you know what? It's not just a noble profession, it pays very well, especially now, when a lot of people want to move out from the cities and create a rural home. At least in my country, I don't know how the economy is in yours, but like, yeah, I mean, wood choppers, like, they pay well. But we look down on these professions. We look down with disgust. And I'm telling you, like, who is we? The intellectuals, the fake intellectuals. Like, when I was at the university, everyone around me looked like that. And I have to agree, I looked down at them as well until I finished university and I understand how the world works. And you understand that, okay, without these people, I would probably not be able to survive. I don't know how to cut a chicken. I don't know how to pluck a chicken. I wouldn't even be able to make some food, you know? So these people not only produce a noble goal for society, but society desperately needs them because the entire culture tries to push people to become fake intellectuals. And another thing with the fake intellectual is that these people, as I mentioned before, are very upset. They're very angry. They're lashing out at the system. And very few of them, not all of them, but very few of them end up having powerful voices. They end up managing to write for some blog, or maybe they even get hired as a journalist. They end up starting their own Twitch channels, or they manage to gather a following on the Twitter. And then they start promoting hot takes. You know, they start regurgitating things that they have heard other people say. Maybe they become a video game journalist, but they don't know anything about video game journalism. Like, what the reason they became a video game journalist is because that was the only position available to him. So what does he do now? Well, he doesn't know anything about video games, but he knows a lot about sexism and the systemic racism in society. And then they start pushing those hot takes, right? And they start noticing that when you complain, when you criticize, when you whine, that goes viral. And it goes viral for many reasons. Like, number one, maybe people agree with it. But number two, like, a lot of people will just share the article and it's like, look at this dumb take. So once they start getting into that position, they start having more and more bizarre hot takes, to the point where they reach air conditionings are sexist, or, oh, this guy managed to land a shuttle on a comet. Oh, well, his shirt is shit. Like, they don't know anything about landing a shuttle on a comet, but they do know that, oh, you're not supposed to dress however you want. Or, you know, like, this girl maybe has a very big achievement, but she's got dreadlocks in her hair, so we can focus on that, right? Because that sells. That's what the outrage says. And they alienate the working class, because the working class views these people with the same contempt. They view these people as not being able to produce anything worthy of value. The hot takes that they produce isn't even recognized by the working class, because their values is completely different, which is why no one watches the Oscars anymore. No one is interested in the hot takes from the actors. And they also view these people with contempt because they're very wealthy. So it doesn't really compute to a working class person who works 11, 12 hours a day to try and provide for his family to listen to a multimillionaire actor talk about how oppressed he is. Like, the builder would change places in a heartbeat with the actor if he could. So you now have like this contempt between the different classes of society. On one hand, you have the bourgeois twats who don't produce anything of value, but they want to be respected, they want to be admired, they want to be loved, and they also claim to speak on behalf of the working class, a working class which despises them, a working class that if it would happen to be in the same room with these individuals would also have contempt for the working class. Because the working class doesn't speak properly. They use slurs, they don't think about not offending people, because the working class thinks about building shit. They don't really have time. I remember like that video with a Hungarian trucker, I believe, who is driving on a highway, and all of a sudden migrants try to go into his lorry, which if they were allowed to go onto his lorry, he would have to pay a 2,000 pound fine, when he would enter Britain, because they would consider that as people smuggling, regardless if those migrants got in with his approval or not. And they were trying to also cut his lorry and stuff. So obviously the guy is pissed off. He starts hurling slurs. He's recording that. He's showing that. And the bourgeois twats get him fired, right? Because the bourgeois twats were the ones encouraging for these policies to exist in the first place, not caring that the working class man is going to be fined £2,000 per person that manages to sneak into his lorry, and he has to do that trip probably every week, right? They don't really care because they don't talk with the working class. They have disdain, deep-rooted disdain for the working class, so they don't speak with him. And the working class man can't even reach to the bourgeois that speak on his behalf to inform them. So yeah, like that's the main problem. You have two groups in society that don't talk with each other, that have disdain for each other, but one of them pretends to care about the other. And the people giving the hot takes, the disenfranchised intellectuals, they will always have the big reader base of the intellectuals elites that are also angsty, and they don't understand why they've been given a bad hand in life. Like, what did they do in order to deserve this? And the core root of the problem are the universities, okay, which want to make more money. They operate like a corporation. They operate like a business. They do not operate as a service to society, even if the government pays for those universities. Even if the government just pays for those universities to exist, that is done from taxpayer money, even that is still not enough, because the professor will always be greedy. He will just want more students to justify more money from the government, more students to justify them buying his books. And by the way, let's not ignore the fact that I know for sure that even in Western academia, students cheat, and sometimes they even bribe the professor. Like, literally pay the professor under the table in order to get a good grade at an exam or something like that. You know, like, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but I have seen teachers that do it. I have also seen teachers that don't. But if you're the type of teacher that likes to take a little bit money under the table, then of course you want more students. And you hope that those students are dumb, so that they can't pass the exam by themselves and they have to cough a little cash. It's disgusting, is what it is. No one wants to criticize this. No one wants to talk about it. But I think like this is one of the main reasons why you have so many people dissatisfied and why so many people are oppressed under capitalism. Because the culture tells you need to have a university to be special. There is nothing special about having a university. Nothing at all. And I tell you this with 2 degrees. And the second one is the fact that universities are not held to a standard. They hold students to a standard, right? When you go to a university, you're held to a standard. What the grade is that on that exam, or how well you studied, you're held to a standard. The university is never held to a standard. Or if it is, it's definitely not a standard that matters. If it is, it's just like a standard of prestige. It's like, oh, which type of professor studies there because he published some papers in some document and blah, blah, blah. And even that, by the way, with university professors publishing papers, there's a lot of conversation to be had about that. Also about corruption and, again, the idea that it doesn't happen in the West is laughable. Like, I know university professors who worked in the West, who worked here, and they would also say that, no, like, what's happening here is happening in the West. It's just that in the West, the press doesn't report about it. And if the press doesn't report about it, people think it doesn't exist. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Don't forget to tune in to This Week is Stupid tomorrow, by the way. Going to be a great episode. And more importantly, please do like the video. It helps with the algorithm. Give it a thumbs up.